Hello, everyone. This is Mary Kurek with Frontrunners Innovate. And with me today is Festus, and I'm going to have you pronounce your last name. I should have asked before we got on air. Say it, if you will.
My other name is Kiplagat. So
Kiplagat.
that's
I had it right.
my
Kiplagat.
tribal name.
All right, Kiplagat. And Festus is coming to us from Kenya, and we wanted to talk with Festus for a lot of reasons, but primarily for his initiatives in agroforestry and climate. We'll get to the heart of that in a few minutes. I wanted also to bring forward Casey Riley, who is our assistant editor at Frontrunners Innovate over the summer. Hey, Casey. And Casey, it was great to be able to pull her into this conversation because she is a leader in Future Farmers of America here in the United States and comes from a family of farmers. So this will be a good conversation to have. So Festus, let's start with you, your background. Let us know what brought you into doing the work that you're doing now. Give us a little snapshot of you.
Thank you so much, Mary and Casey, for having me in your platform. So just to get my name right, my name is Festus Kiplagat. I come from the western part of Kenya. I come from a community that is known for running. So, so those people who you see, they have the resilience to win the marathon.
Yes.
So I come from that community.
Yeah.
That is my tribe, and,
Oh.
and so we have the resilience to run a marathon under 2 hours. So we have the likes of Eliud Kipchoge, legendary runners. But for me, I built my career in a different trajectory. So I'm running a different race against climate change and focusing on nature. So I come from the western part of Kenya. So that is where I was born and brought up. I grew up in the villages of Kenya in the rural setup. And I was graced to be born in a family of 9, where I happened to be the last born. So traditionally, the last born is the custodian of the home. A last born is always around the mother, so enjoying all the food love from the other siblings.
The baby.
Yeah, so it's the baby of the home.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when I was growing up, I was taking care of the family sheep as a tiny little boy, and we happened to live adjacent to a woodland forest. So I would take the family sheep into the forest, and you know, in those years there were no smartphones, there were nothing, you know. So all that could keep me busy is to connect with my sheep, call them names, and connect with nature all around. And nature was a blossom around, you know, the butterflies, the springs, especially during the rainy season, the forest around, the diversity of trees and the undergrowth. So that was a point where I connected strongly with nature, because we could enjoy wild fruits. We could get into the forest and begin to whistle to connect. That was a communication language, connecting, you know, gathering with my peers, so that we could enjoy taking care of the sheep and picking wild fruits. So that's how I grew up, and I was a champion swimmer. You know.
Oh, I
I
remember
know.
you telling me that. Yeah.
Yeah, among my peers, I could swim in those rivers, in those springs. That is what I could enjoy a lot, and that is how my passion, my connection, my relationship with nature began. And my mom happened to have knowledge around trees and indigenous trees, especially medicinal plants. So once in a while, I could accompany my mom to pick roots from these medicinal plants the bark, the leaves that could be used to treat quite a number of ailments in the villages. And so there was a lot of knowledge transfer, indigenous knowledge transfer on trees and medicinal plants and all those kind of names, especially the traditional names for trees. Yeah, so when I grew up and began building my career, and to cut the long story short, a lot happened in between. I began developing passion to get now the scientific knowledge of what I used to enjoy in the village. At age 7, I used to raise my own seedlings. I used to grow I used to grow my own seedlings, recycling, using tins, plastic bags, buckets from milk. So I had my tiny little nursery when I was just a little young boy. And when whatever germinated, like mango, I could sow mango seeds, avocado, and all manner of species. I could sell those seedlings at the local market. I could get some money, the little money that I could, and I could buy myself, school books, textbooks, or some, or I could buy. We used to call them mandazi. Mandazi is what they bake out of just a local baking at the local center. Yes,
a treat.
Yeah, so that's how I connected with nature. So when I transitioned from high school, I wanted to seek for careers that build the knowledge that I gained from my mom. And that is how my journey with forestry and agroforestry began. So I went through university, studied forestry, and I enjoyed my study because I had traditional knowledge around trees.
Yeah.
So it was a transitioning that knowledge into now the science-based knowledge. So it transitioned from the university. I was lucky to work with government for some time. So a lot of my experience around environmental conservation, I had it in government, working in arid and semi-arid areas where there's little precipitation, So balancing food security with environmental conservation. So that's how my knowledge is built around food security, climate change, agroforestry, and all these other land use systems around fragile ecosystems. Yes.
Well, this sounds strange to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you to explain food security because you and I might know what that is. There are some people that would be seeing this that might not understand what that term means. And then also to explain agriforestry, because what that sounds like is a coming together of agriculture and forestry. But really, there's probably a deeper definition for that. So I just want to get everybody clear and everybody on the same page. So if you'll explain what that means, food security first.
Food security, Mary, is having sufficient food production that can meet the needs of a household. An household in Africa comprises of an average of 5 persons.
Okay.
So
all across the continent.
Without
average across the continent.
Especially in Kenya. Okay. An average household in Kenya comprises of 5 members.
Okay.
So food security is the ability for that household to meet its food demand without lack. I mean, having breakfast all the way from breakfast, lunch to dinner. I don't know why dinner is you call dinner in Europe or in the Western world.
In the country sometimes.
But for us, we call it supper.
Where you are, yeah.
So the ability to meet the household demand in terms of food demand for the household, that's food security. Okay. And the opposite is food insecurity.
Insecurity, when you don't have enough. Yeah.
Yes, and that is a challenge that we have in most majority areas in Africa.
Well, I know that you serve
Because
with some committees and some organizations that have some numbers around that. Do you have any off the top of your head about food insecurity around Africa or in Kenya?
yeah, FAO, Food Agriculture Organization, has a lot of rich data on the food dynamics and the landscape in terms of food production in Africa. And the last time I checked is they said beside climate change, beside the threat that climate change has posed for, because climate change is global,
Uh-huh.
but land degradation is a great risk in Africa
Mhm.
that is putting close to 1 billion people globally to risk, because land degradation erodes soil fertility and erodes opportunities.
Yeah.
And majority of that percentage is come from Africa.
Wow. So
And
it's
when we talk of
very
when we
impactful.
talk of food, sorry, go ahead, Mary.
It's very impactful then. The agri, and that's where we're getting to is the ag forestry piece that I wanted you to explain a little bit and how that ties into this.
Yes, and when we talk about food insecurity, the most people who are affected are women and children.
Mhm.
Women and children are the hard hit when it comes to food insecurity in Africa, because men can move, men are stronger, they can migrate with the animals to look for greener pastures.
Mhm.
And the people who are left behind are children and the elderly.
Mhm.
Yes, and agroforestry provides a nexus between you're balancing the environmental conservation to unlock what nature has to meet the needs for communities.
Uh-huh.
So agroforestry is a broad term that means a deliberate intervention to combine the human component, agriculture component, and the tree component. So we have arranging those components together, that interaction to meet the needs of community. So you're utilizing the tree component. We
Mhm.
are talking of when you're talking of fruit trees, for example, high value trees to
Mhm.
provide food, and that works best at you've heard of the food forests, the kitchen gardening, that complements the objectives for communities at household level. So those who are doing kitchen gardening, so combining kitchen gardening to have food, to have fruit, to
Mhm.
have firewood, and that combination at the same time protecting the soil and enhancing soil fertility such that the food production at within a unit area, be it an acre, half an acre, it is a sustainable cycle. So
Mhm.
that is all about agroforestry.
Okay.
Mary.
Excellent. Well, now we've established your expertise. So now we need to know what you're doing with it, and you're doing a lot. You are involved in several different efforts, but let's get to the Green Planet Initiative 2050 first. So, talk to us a little bit about how you came into this sort of work. It's part advocacy, education to people, and then downright getting your hands dirty and getting some policies and some things done throughout Africa, I believe. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you so much. So after all this, the experience and the knowledge around trees, environment, and the projects that I interacted with, working with non-governmental organizations, donor-funded projects, then I had a urge and a push from within me, because we have to be enthusiastic. There must be a passion that makes you live and makes you happy. So I thought of bringing a difference in the communities and paying back, especially to the community that brought me up, because that is where I gained a lot of knowledge and around trees and the environment. So I created a platform that I call Green Planet Initiative 2050. So Green Planet Initiative 2050 is advancing low-cost approaches, what we call ecosystem-based adaptation, promoting low-cost intervention within household level. So we're looking at regenerative agroforestry. So regenerative agroforestry is where you're leveraging on indigenous knowledge. Communities have knowledge around trees, Mary. Communities have knowledge on how to fix their own problems at household level.
Yeah.
So Green Planet Initiative, I'm packaging 5 Ps. So the Green Planet Initiative itself is a platform. First P, that's a platform. So the second P is programs. So I'm putting together programs, putting together projects, putting together processes, and putting together that yields products. So I'm centering around 5 Ps, which are realistic. So it's all about stimulating grassroots movements. So all I did, I identified farmers within my network as the drivers of my intervention. So a farmer, I train a farmer as an extension agent.
Yeah.
And this farmer brings within the circle of influence. Within the circle of influence, they reach out to 10 other farmers. So in one farmer, I have a pack of 10 or more. So as an influencer, so if you talk of 10 farmers, you have a multiplying effect of 100 farmers plus the 10 whom you're using them as trainer of trainers. So you have 110. So in that, it creates and it stimulates a farmer-to-farmer spread, farmer-to-farmer movement. So that model, that approach, I have been able to connect 10,000 farmers.
Whoa. That's impressive. Casey, I know you're listening to this because FFA has a similar sort of, spread. When he's talked about extension agents, I was thinking about the ag extension programs that are here in the United States and how they get information out. My biggest question now is, what are you training the farmers to do? These train the trainer programs here. What are you training them to train the others to do?
The most important leverage is get the traditional knowledge that they have around the environment.
So a sharing of information.
Yes, sharing of information, even before we talk about projects. And if you want to fix our ecosystems, if we want to fix our agricultural landscapes, forest landscapes, pastoral landscapes, we should focus on mindset change.
Yes.
If we focus on changing the landscape, we lose it. But if we focus in changing the mindsets, let the community bring out the knowledge that they have around their environment. And then yours is to bring the sustainable techniques, the sustainable technologies around what they already know. So if you're talking of the science-based knowledge, so you bring the science-based knowledge transfer into what they already have to concretely empower them and stir them up, stimulate them to build that movement around what they already know.
Love your passion. It just is awesome. Talk to us about the 2050 that is in your title.
Yeah, so I am excited to report that when the UN decade of ecosystem restoration was launched, no, it has not been launched. It was initiated last year, and they'll be launching it in June 5th during the World Environment Day in Pakistan, because Pakistan happens to have gotten it right when it comes to tree planting.
Oh,
Pakistan is transforming their landscape.
wow.
They're, you know, they're doing billion trees across their landscape, and that is where the launch of the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration will be launched on 5th June. So when they called on initiatives, organizations to apply, I applied through my platform because I wanted also to align myself with what is happening globally.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been endorsed by the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration as a restoration implementer.
Wow.
So I've been given the official invite to participate in
Congratulations.
the movement, the global movement. So
That's great.
So let me unpack what Green Planet Initiative 2050 is all about. Green Planet Initiative 2050 has three phases of 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the first year is aligned to the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. We want to have a fully restored planet by 2030. And that's the vision of everyone.
Yeah. And
so whatever we are doing at the grassroots is building towards the UN Decade of Restoration. So for the next 2021, 20, it's a race against time to ensure that we create resilient landscapes where we are operating on in Kenya. We're talking of the western side of Kenya. So we are building an eco-region to ensure that we contribute towards ecosystem restoration. So that is the 10-year piece. The 10-year piece, that is 2031, 2040, is building on the successes. What worked in this race against time? What worked best between 2021 and 2030? So replicating that across other regions or even across other nations, depending on the capacities that we're going to have at that time. So we'll be doing that in scale. 2041, 2050 yeah. is now we are talking about towards zero emissions. The race towards net zero, when we have everyone is participating, you know, the business community and all companies and the movement globally has gained a lot of traction. We have the monorails that are emission-free, vehicles. We're talking of flying vehicles that time. Yeah. So we want all that, the race towards net zero by 2050. Wow. So that's how I'm structuring my vision.
That's why your logo.
So I am connected with.
Your logo is representative of the 3 decades. Yeah.
Yes. So accelerating forest and land restoration combined.
So, it's going to take a lot of energy. You're just one guy, right? And with a lot of farmers. And what you need partners to help you with this, I'm sure, global partners. So other than your relationship with the United Nations, what other partners do you have, or what other partnerships are you looking for? And then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Casey to ask you a couple of questions.
Sure. Some of, you know, this, my mission is humongous, but I'm keeping it practical. I'm keeping it practical as much as possible, Mary. And so I am part of the Act 2030 founding members. I happen to be a founding member. Act 2030 is one of the biggest global organizations that is advancing ecosystem restoration. Their target is to restore 500 million hectares across globally. Yeah. So I happen to be a founding member of that organization. So that's one of my strongest partners. Yes. I am also part of a very strong group that is coming up in Europe. We call it Renature. Renature. So I am an agroforestry expert for Renature. So I am their project consultant. So So those are leverage platforms, and I'm connecting with various. There's a lot that is happening behind. They say behind the scene, or you call it behind the woodworks. Meg.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, this is
Yes.
good. This is good. Well, we have just a few minutes left. I wanted Casey to jump in. So Casey, if you'll unmute yourself, and I'm sure you have a couple of questions. Casey's a farmer girl herself. So go for it, girl.
So I wanted to ask, you're talking about the Green Planet Initiative, and you mentioned about your projects, and I was wondering if you could elaborate a little more about the different projects that you've completed.
Yeah. So we have initiated a project that we call it a regreening project. A regreening project which is low cost. We're encouraging farmers to restore their landscapes without tree planting, without necessarily planting trees. What they do, they enclose their areas. Most of our farmers come from the arid and semi-arid areas. And in these areas, you can, if you enclose an area, it regenerates. Nature has its own way of fixing it. So it's totally a low-cost initiative. So we encourage the farmers to enclose their farms. And within 1-2 years, regeneration of various species at once without tree planting. So that is one. And then we give them a package of how to integrate that regeneration aspect with other objectives that they have. If they are practicing agroforestry, if they are practicing pasture management, so they integrate with that system.
Another thing I wanted to ask is, where I'm from, we use a lot of pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers, and I know that that really is harmful to the soil nutrients. And so how would I advocate for this change? That's something that I'm interested in, preserving our land, because I know climate change is very harmful impact in a harmful impact. And so I was wondering, how do I go about advocating for this change?
Yeah, I think the best way is to support farmers advocate for regenerative agriculture, or what they call conservation agriculture, the organic farming methodologies. You remember, like our farmers, all of our farmers, they have chicken, they have some animals. So encouraging farmers, instead of using chemical fertilizers, which is totally wreaking havoc on our soils, they can use the manure, farmyard manure from the chicken, from their livestock, and that they can improve their soil, and especially within the kitchen garden, to produce their own food. Because if farmers produce their own food, you're controlling the exposure to these pesticides. So regenerative agriculture is the best way to go. And there's a lot of semantics around it. People call it farming God's way, zero cost farming, but all of it is regenerative agriculture, because you're looking at healing the soil, conditioning the soil.
Well, yeah, the way you put that, healing the soil, nurturing the soil, really. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I can resonate with my mom. When she's growing in her garden, she would always get cow manure for the fertilizer. And I always kind of wondered why she did that. So that's cool to have that explanation. I also wanted to ask, what advice would you give a young person going into the agroforestry field?
I think I still hold to the fact that farming remains the highest, the highest paying job in the world, because there's always a fulfillment when if you produce your own food with your own hands. So I encourage young people to take up farming, from where our parents have left, because it's a good thing to embrace technology, but we need to use technology to support farming as well. A lot of young people are migrating to the cities, and we are leaving the the countryside for the elderly only. So young people should get back to farming. There's a lot of fulfillment in farming. There's a lot of connection. We need the young people to reconnect back with nature.
Thank you so much.
You know, what is it my husband always says? He quotes somebody else that's always saying, you know, what should you invest in? And the guy always says land, because they're not making any more of it. And so if you can invest in land and invest in what you do with land, there will never be a dry spell for you. I mean, I think that is like the oldest career path, I think, ever, just because at some point we had to grow. I think I had mentioned this to you, Casey, at one point. We had a gentleman from Uganda who, during the early days of the pandemic, he lost his position and he was heading into the medical field. And it was 7 people in his household. And in order to be able to make ends meet, he had a little plot of land there, and he just started growing vegetables and then growing medicinal herbs and drying those out and using those to sell. He grew tomatoes and other, lettuces and things like that, and sold those, and even ended up making, stoves, custom stoves for people in the village that didn't have them, and sold those. And so it became a mainstay, that whole farming aspect of his life, which he wasn't even a farmer to begin with, but he got really good at it really fast. And, it became the mainstay of his living at that point. So it really saved him during the pandemic, him and his family, the whole, household. So it's something to take seriously. So thank you so much, Festus, for sharing the stories, the information, the education, everything, your advocacy and your passion. We appreciate that. And we're going to push that forward, and we'll be in touch, because I have a feeling we could probably send some partners your way. So we hope to do so. So thank you very much. Thank you, Casey, for jumping on with me this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much. Bye.